All right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Okay, welcome to today's session over here. Right. So as usual, what we'll be doing is cover some of the opportunities that we have for the week. Okay, and then we'll do a quick Q&A. See if you guys have any particular questions, and then after that, we'll do a quick wrap up. To update you of some of the upcoming events that we are planning out as well. Okay, good. So if you take a look at this week's event calendar, it's definitely more, I would say, more eventful as compared to what we have last week. Okay, so this week here, almost every other day, starting from Tuesday, we do have some high impact news. Okay, so tomorrow you can see we do have the Canadian CPI, definitely important, right? And then going into Wednesday, we do have the Chinese yuan interest rate, but of course we don't really trade that. But we also have the UK CPI year on year, which again you can see inflation in the UK is still very very high. Then we have on Thursday FOMC, Fed funds rate, following that SMB, following that Bank of England rate statement as well, right? So Thursday again is very very eventful, and then going into Friday we have Bank of Japan. We have various PMIs coming in from Euro, Pound, CAD as well as US, right? So this week, do expect some kind of volatility, right? Do expect that we may see a lot of movement in the market, and that also opens up the possibility of potential trade. Okay, so um, do have all this in mind as we are looking into the charts later on. Okay, because when we are talking about, let's say, opportunities on certain related currencies over here, um, we can look at catching the catalyst, right, from the high impact news. And of course, if you're trading any of those currencies related, do take note of the volatility as well. Okay, good. So let's jump into the charts. First up over here we have the dollar index. Now last week dollar index did a little bit of a pushback to the upside, but overall to me it did not really change the entire structure. Now, last week we were looking at somewhere around here wave 5. We were expecting a deeper pullback. We didn't really get it. Okay, the market actually pushed a little bit higher, extended it, but it didn't really go impulsively, right? And right now, if you take a look at it, we do have the divergence established, which again indicate that the momentum is not really strong, and there's a good chance that we may still see that drop, right? So I'm actually a little bit more interested in looking for sell trade opportunity in the dollar. Of course, what I want to see is the first impulsive drop to the downside. Following that, I get a corrective move, then that will be my sell trade setup. Okay, of course, we can shift this here, and ideally, we want to see the impulsive drop first, right? So the impulsive drop may come to us maybe, with, if you combine it with the catalyst, ideally, okay, going back to calendar over here, right? Ideally, we want to see it post FOMC, right? So keep a lookout on the dollar index, and that will open up various opportunities that we have some in some of the major pairs over here, right? Now, euro dollar, I'm generally still neutral. We're definitely already in that key zone. Um, Let me pick this up here. Okay, extend a bit. Okay, now euro dollar is definitely trading in this key zone over here, which may have completed the entire three wave move, but we did not really see any obvious rejection back up first, right? I mean, right now the market is essentially just consolidating. So what we can see is this may eventually maybe also turn into a bigger crawl before the reversal. So I'm neutral and I'm just being patient on the euro right now and see how it develops, right? The idea is if we can get an impulsive move back up, then obviously we'll wait for a correction to take this trade all the way back to the top around 1.0945, right? But before that, we need to first see an impulsive move. If you don't get that, we'll just continue to be neutral. And I think this week, my primary focus will not be very much on the euro, but will be more on other major pairs, right? Which you can see I've tagged it out over here. Okay, GBP USD is something that I would pay a little bit more attention as compared to the euro. simply because GBP USD right now we do have a very nice little cross structure developing. And of course, this comes in quite nicely with a recent divergence build up here as well. So this is something that you can look into as well if you go down to the lower time frame. Okay, on hourly here, we do see a very nice little smaller crawl pattern. Of course, we can squeeze this a little bit lower for potential entry right now. And the pattern is essentially an impulsive move, and then after that it starts to crawl, right? So if you can get a break to the upside, that will be a decent buy trade. Okay, going back to the 4-hour time frame, this buy trade here potentially can bring us all the way back, depending on how aggressive in your targets. But I think, we can look to aim with a target all the way back at 2745, 2740 area. All right. Yeah, so keep an eye on that. I think GBP USD definitely have the opportunity, and of course, if you align it with a news, we don't we are not short of it, right? We don't have no, I mean we have sufficient catalysts that can really push that, right? Coming from FOMC, coming from Bank of England, coming from CPI on the UK side of things as well. Okay, so GBP USD, definitely you want to pay closer attention to it. Your entry and execution really depends on how aggressive you are. If you're aggressive, of course, you can look for the break, right? As I mentioned on hourly. If you're a bit more conservative, then of course wait for the break to the upside first, combine it with a correction, and then that will be a setup to look for buy trade. Okay, so pound dollar definitely. Aussie dollar here, I'm just being very, very neutral and patient. We are seeing a corrective move here, so that opens up the possibility of one more drop. But we have already been falling quite a bit, right? I mean, can this continue to drop further? The answer is yes, but at where we are right now, I'm not too keen to be focusing too much attention on this, right? I mean, I have better opportunities at other pair. I would definitely want to focus on those. So Aussie dollar, unless you are, kind of like a fan of it, right? Which means that you don't really want to trade others, you just want to focus on Aussie dollar. That I would suppose you have an opportunity to look for sell. Okay, so on a lower time frame, you can look at this as a invalidation level. Okay, and you will look at the bottom there as your key level. And of course, if you can get a tiny bit of a retracement back up, that will give you a sell trade opportunity to the downside, right? Kind of give you a three-wave move, something like this, right? On an hourly, okay? So if you go back to the 4-hour, that's what it looks like, right? If you can get internal correction, you can look for the short-term sell, right? So this is more of a hourly kind of trade, short-term move to the downside if you're interested into it. But for me personally, I would just be staying neutral. I'll focus on other setups and opportunities that are clearer to me, right? So that's on Aussie. Okay, and then we have the dollar Canadian. So dollar Canadian actually dropped very, very nicely. Okay, this is a trade that we had last week. We kind of managed to take it with a break after a crawl, right? And then hits our target back down here. So right now we're looking for re-entry opportunities should we get a three-wave move to the upside, right? So now it's a little bit too early to measure this, okay? But of course, temporary, we're just going to take from high to low. Look out for the 15 and 618 pullback. And of course, ideally, we want to see a three-wave corrective move to back to the 15 and 618, and then we'll look for the trade to the downside, right? Yeah, so this one is also a very, very clear one. And again, we are not short of catalysts, right? We have the CAD coming in, we have the dollar coming in. So definitely a lot of opportunities that it can really move price, right? So again, if this just push back up very, very fast as an impulse, obviously you don't just go and sell it, right? You want to see a corrective move. Okay, so give it time, right? Right now we're Monday. For this corrective move to develop, we probably need to give it until like Thursday or Friday, right? So your setup on this pair may only come to you on Thursday and Friday, right? So just be patient about it. Dollar yen, there are a little bit of an upside here, but I don't see a very clear structure setup. So this is actually very, very similar to like Aussie dollar, right? For me, not something I'll pay too much attention to because I have better ones that I can focus on. Okay. But for those of you who are into it, like again, a die-hard fans of dollar yen, you must trade the yen. then you can definitely go down to the lower time frame, wait for a pullback. Okay, perhaps towards that 50 or 618 area. Okay, kind of a three-wave pullback here, and of course you can look for an upside. Okay, yeah, so that's the part. Okay, so depending again, as I mentioned, if you're looking at intraday short term, then yeah, there are opportunities. But for me, on a bigger perspective, not the best, right? Okay, then we have gold, right? Gold right now here. What I'm seeing, right? We're basically in a crossroad right now, right? What I mean by that is the market completed a three-wave move to the upside. It completed a three-wave move to the downside, and it came back towards a 50 and 618, right? So 50 and 618 is always a key area after three-wave move completion, because it can either mean that this three-wave is just a bigger one, and we can expect another move, or that three-wave is done, and this one here we can look for more upside. Okay, so the clue that we're looking out for is how is the market gonna develop after hitting this zone. Is it gonna be a strong rejection down, or is this gonna be a corrective move? Okay, because if this is gonna be a corrective move, then obviously we are more interested in the upside because of this impulse correction upside. Then we'll see it as this is an impulse, this is a three-wave correction, and then one more pushback, right, to the upside, bigger move. If we kind of get a impulsive drop from here, so kind of V-shape, then we'll be expecting this as a 1, 2, maybe this is developing like that, and then one more drop. Okay, so we're really looking at how it's developing. Right now, my primary focus is looking at the lower time frame. Okay, and see kind of we can get the crawl structure, right? So we kind of got our first top, potentially second top. If this goes back up one more time, that will give us a 3 touches at the top, and short term, right, we can still look for the sell. Okay, because then this will be an impulse crawl. Around that key zone, we have some resistance from a trend line, so that can align with a short-term sell trade setup. Okay, so gold, that's the view as of now. Of course, as the market continues to develop, you need to monitor how price is evolving. Okay, and you need to then update your analysis accordingly. But as of what we're seeing today, this is the analysis that I have. Oil, I'm just gonna skip it. I think that's not an opportunity right now. S&P, we have a short-term move to the downside. This is another solid trade, right? We kind of managed to catch some of the downside initially with this move here, right? We managed to catch this. We did not really trade here. Okay, but again, sometimes on hindsight it looks pretty neat, right? But for me, on a 4-hour scale, when the market was going up, it was pretty sharp, right? So there's no reason to be jumping in unless you manage to catch it on Friday. But for me, that's not a okay. I don't really like to be executing trades, on a Friday. But you have some crawly structure happening there on the lower time frame on hourly, right? So same principle, right? You can see again and again, we're basically using the same principle to analyze, forecast, and trade the market. Okay, so S&P this week here, I think any kind of pullback correctively, we can still expect one more drop to complete this 1, 2, 3, and then from there we may look for upside. Okay, so this week here, I think can look for a bit of short-term sell. Okay, pound yen is another one that I think it's worth noting. Okay, we're kind of getting very, very close to this area. Market is definitely corrective in nature right now, right? We kind of get a divergence building up as well. So I'm interested in upside and not so much on the downside, because the primary view here is this is very corrective in nature, especially as where we're developing here. That will give us a decent buy trade. Okay, so this one you can go down to the lower time frame. Okay, and of course just spot for a ideal setup, right? So we're basically waiting for this to drop a little bit more. Ideally, you should go a 3 touch on the hourly, and then just use a minor high as your potential breakout trade to the upside, right? And of course, your target will be all the way back at the previous high at 186.7. So that's definitely an opportunity to keep an eye on for pound yen. Euro pound, everything is still moving in expectation, right? We kind of get still looking for upside. Now again, you can see while the general move is to the upside, but the overall development is not very clear, right? But that's the characteristics of Euro pound. Okay, it likes to do a lot of like up and down, up and down, up and down. Even though if it's going up, it likes to do choppy environment. Okay, so there's something that I personally don't like, and I just like to skip pairs like this. I don't really focus too much on it. But I understand some of you actually like to trade Euro pound. Okay, so my analysis basically is just to also share with you what I'm looking at, and we're still basically bullish on this, and we're looking at areas around the zone. Okay, 8640, 8670. You still have a little bit more upside, of course. If you manage to get a buy here, you just manage to trade accordingly. If you have a buy previously, same thing, just manage your trade. I would say if you don't have any buy trade at the moment, your risk reward may not be very worthwhile if you're considering to buy somewhere at that area. Okay, so this one here is more of like if you have a trade last week, okay, based on what we covered last week, if you manage to catch it, great, just manage it accordingly. But if you don't, then I don't think this week is one that you want to pay much attention on. Aussie yen, we are still very neutral. Yes, we did get a break out of the trend line over here, but this move is not very convincing, right? To me, it's very corrective in nature, and I'm not surprised if this actually comes back down, break this low, or even that low, before the move back up, if that's going to be the case, right? Because this is a valid kind of pattern. If it breaks this low, right, we kind of have this as a expanding flat before the next move up. So I don't get a very clear sense of like what pattern exactly is developing right now. So overall, Aussie yen, I'm just putting this aside. I'm not touching it right now. Okay. Pound Aussie is another very nice trade that we had last week. We managed to sell it close to the top there. Okay. We saw the impulsive move. Initially, I'm expecting a tiny bit of a corrective pullback for me to get involved in another sell. We didn't really get it, so we just managed our first position all the way down to the target there. Okay, so right now I'm neutral on this. Again, I think you can see why. The reason is because we have completed this as a three-wave move. Pips around 100%, we see the market stalling. Okay, and if you are more of a counter trend, I think you can potentially consider to keep a lookout and see if you can get a short-term bounce, right? And such a trade usually need to go down to like hourly and wait for a crawl pattern, right? If you can get a crawl pattern here, then of course you can look for a short-term move back up. Okay, but we don't see it today, right? So I can only really share with you what we have today. But of course, as the week develops, we may get some short-term opportunity to the upside. Okay, good. So that's on the pound. Aussie, right? Bitcoin here finally started moving. Okay, so we kind of get an impulsive move overall. You can see here. Now this is a classic pattern that I think you want to add it into your library and toolbox as well, right? Now if you can observe previously, Bitcoin has this area of I would say support zone, right, where price wasn't able to break through. Okay, and then last week we kind of get a break, and then instantly the market actually went back up. Okay, so this is what we call a fake break, right? And from another perspective, okay, we kind of call this a liquidity flush, right? Which means that if you imagine, right, if a typical support resistance trader would see this as, oh, the price is supporting, if you're looking to buy at support, where would you put your stop? Likely at the bottom of it, right? And this is what we call liquidity flush, where the price actually got pushed down, and all this stop loss that might be at the bottom may have been taken out. Okay, so basically, flush away those liquidity in the market, and then after that, you see a pushback up, right? So again, trap some of the seller there. So if those people are just simply looking at an immediate, breakout trade to downside, then they would have sold here, and when the price went back up, they might have cut their loss, right? So they basically flush out the buyers, they flush out the sellers. Okay, and that's what we call liquidity flush, right? Usually when you see a pattern like that, okay, this move up may start to be genuine. Okay, genuine means that this may be indeed the bottom for now, and we can see more upside. Okay, so with that in mind, right, you can see for the past almost close to 2 months, I've been very neutral on BTC. Okay, but what I see last week is now that I'm actually a bit more on the bullish side of things, which means I'm actually interested to see if we can get into a buy trade in Bitcoin. Okay, so the idea is, again, we want to wait for the pattern that we're familiar with, wait for a 3-wave pullback, and of course that will be our buy trade setup to the upside. Okay, so sometimes it's just worth to be patient, right? Because I always say if the market is doing this, there's no point trading here, okay? Because it's just not moving. You can't force the price to move, and if the price is just basically not moving, you're not gonna make any money trading within that zone. Okay, so you might as well, just don't touch it, focus on other things, and then when the time is right, you come back to it. Okay, so right now is, I think, the optimum time, right, to really start focusing back on BTC for opportunities, and things like Aussie yen is what I say right now. Just stay out of it, right? Again, if you're trying to trade within this kind of choppy environment, it's just so difficult, right? So those are some of the setups and opportunities that I'm focusing on. Okay, so we kind of talk about the index here as well. German DAX may not be the clearest with this impulsive drop, because if this were corrective in nature, then that would be great. Okay, because then they will be expecting one more pushback to complete this cycle. But this move back down is pretty impulsive, right? So for now, I think it's not the best one to be looking out for. Again, every time we see a V, that's what I always say, right? Just give it time. This has a little bit of a crawlish pattern, so it may go back up, okay, to retest this minor high before the bigger move back down, right? So short term, you may be able to look for upside, but again, it's not the best in terms of context, okay? Okay, this is moving down very nicely right now. Okay, so again, you can see those patterns playing out. So if I kind of put this here, this is where we're expecting another downside, right? So on the lower time frame, the directional bias is very clear, right? You just basically need to wait for a corrective pullback, continue to look to sell all the way back down towards the previous low there, right? So again, very nice setup. It's not something I trade, Hang Seng, but I think some of you actually traded it last week, then that would be great. Okay. Hey, FTSE, I had a nice little reaction at the top over there. So you can see, right, very nice 3-wave correction completed, and we're kind of seeing a rejection that's impulsive from that peak. Okay. So this gives you the sign and the clue that we're likely going to see a bit more downside, right? So this might be the first impulsive drop. You get a 3-wave corrective move. You can expect one more drop, okay, back towards a 50. So you want to look out for this trade. Don't try to catch this, right? Let this play out. Let the correction play out so that you get the impulse correction set up. You trade the third move down. Okay. Yeah, so I don't think this is a setup this week, right? Because you need to give time for it to develop this move. And by the time it's completed with this structure, it's likely going to be like next week's setup. Right, so that's on okay, so that's on the FTSE. Nikkei, really nothing clear right now. You probably do not want to touch it. Yeah, I think Nikkei is not something you want to touch it. Okay. NDX. Not really, okay. If you take a look at NDX, I think like NASDAQ, right? This is basically NASDAQ. I think NASDAQ is just a very, very clear pattern. Okay. Basically just expecting a three-wave move, and then once it's done, you'll be looking at a buy trade. Right? So this one I think is very, very clear. Don't need to overcomplicate it. There's no real liquidity flush over here, right? Again, the idea of liquidity flush is you have a very, very obvious resistance or support, and the market try to test it a couple of times, right? And then you finally get a fake break. Okay, but we don't really get that here, right? I mean, you take a look. There's no real, there's no real like test a couple of times. Whether is it top or bottom? Yeah. So this I would say is just a very, very simple three-wave move to the upside. And then what we have is right now a pullback. 1, 2, 3, and essentially what you're looking out for is just some rejection of this area here, either a crawl or V, and you'll be looking for more upside. I think this is a very, very clear cut and straightforward analysis on NASDAQ. Okay. Aussie Canadian. Okay, we didn't really get that pushback up before the sell down, but we just got a consolidation here. I would say you don't want to pay too much attention to this right now. Okay, I have a bottom, yes. Okay, to look for a sell, unless this goes back up and come down, there's no clear risk to reward ratio that's worth considering, right? So the idea is if this goes back up, we can see this as a 1, 2, 3, right? And that will be an impulse correction, and then you can look for this. But you need to then wait for price to actually go back up first to make sense of the risk to reward ratio. Okay, because if you're gonna look to sell it somewhere around here, and your target is here, then your risk to reward ratio is probably at best 1:1, and I don't think that's something that's worth really going in. Okay, because we already came down quite a bit. Okay, so if you just put that kind of idea where the price has been falling and you're trying to sell it at a cheap price, the room for price to continue to drop may not be as attractive as compared to you trying to sell it at the top. Okay, so unless it gets a decent corrective pullback, and then you try to sell it here, and then this opens up the room for you to profit. But if you're just trying to catch from here to here, that is very, very small, it's probably not going to be worth the resources. Okay, so that's my take on Aussie Canadian. Okay, if you take a look at pound franc, probably not something I want to focus as well, right? Again, you look at how the price has been moving since that was mid-July. These are pairs that I would say, if you try to trade within this environment, you're trying to make your life difficult. Okay, focus on things that are moving very, very clearly, right? And if you can't see an obvious range bar environment, you probably want to avoid that unless you're a range trader. Okay, which means you try to just catch it here in bottom, right? So sell top, buy bottom, sell top. Dollar franc, it continued to crawl to the upside, so I would suggest just wait for the pullback. Okay, so until that pullback develops, there's really nothing you should be doing. Okay, now some of you may say, oh, can I sell this? There's no reason to sell it now. Okay, and unless you get an impulsive drop and then you get a corrective move, then short term you can sell this. But if you're more of a swing trader, I would say focus on upside but wait for the pullback, then you buy. Okay, so nothing there as well, right? Nothing really there for us to be trading on the dollar franc. Okay, yeah, so for me personally, the focus will be pound dollar Okay, dollar Canadian. Gold here potentially to the downside, right? S&P further downside. Hong Yen potentially on the upside, and BTC over here. Okay, this is another index you probably just want to avoid. Okay, I mean right now you take a look at this here, we're basically trapped in this range. Okay, so whenever you are in such a range, you always want to pay very close attention to the top and the bottom. Okay, which means that until we get a very clean break out of this range, you're basically just trading within it. Okay, and look at where price is right now. We're in the middle of the range, right? In the middle of the top and the bottom. So this limits your profit potential. Okay, because today you're looking at a sell. Where would your target be? Your target would make sense to be here, right? Because price hasn't really break through that. You expect this to bounce. Okay, now if your target is going to be there, if you're going to initiate some sell here, where would be your stop? Your stop needs to go here or even at the top, right? So you look at the risk reward, at best 1:1. You want to ask yourself this question: is it worth kind of like channeling my focus, my energy into something like that? Okay, it's the same as buy, right? I mean, if you look at buy here, where will your target be? Near here. Where your stop needs to go, right at the bottom. So again, it's a 1:1 kind of risk to reward ratio. Okay, now that's the very reason why whenever I identify a range bound environment, okay, I don't really like to focus too much onto that until we get a clean break out of it. Right, now going back to BTC, right, you can see these are environment that you don't want to be in until we get a clean break. But of course, I'm not too keen in selling it, so I'm not going to be focusing all the way until you can see here, right? We're basically range until recently we kind of got an impulsive break, plus just now I kind of explain the concept of a fake break at the bottom. And that's the part where we come back and say, okay, let's focus on it. Okay. So whenever you identify an instrument that is really just in a very tight kind of like range bound environment, if you're trading it, it's tough. Okay, so you want to then put it aside, come back another time. But of course, if you're looking at asset class like stocks, that's a different story. Okay, because you are probably looking at catching the break of that consolidation if you're looking at stock investment. But if you're doing kind of like shorter term trade, even as a swing trade, you don't want to be putting too many of your resources into a range bound environment, because that's not where your major bulk of profit can really come, right? You want to just be focused on something else. Okay. Yeah. A pound yen, I think we talked about it already, right? So yeah, right. We're basically just looking for a buy trade opportunity. Okay. Take a look at Euro AUD. Okay, Euro AUD came towards the 123, did a bounce. Right, so yeah, I think this one here you can continue to focus on a potential short-term upside. Kind of get a pretty decent up move, right? So a little bit of a V. So if we can get a pullback correctively, then of course we'll be looking for an upside. Right, so this one, you just give it some time and see if you can get a corrective pullback after an impulsive move, right? So yeah, this one you have an opportunity here. Okay, this is on Euro AUD. Pound CAD, don't touch it first, right? I mean, we came down, we attacked the area, but there's no reaction as of now. On a lower time frame, you can start considering a reversal. Okay, I think on the H1 we have something. Okay, we have a crawl completed, right, on the H1. Your minor high will be here. Okay, so basically what you'll be looking out for would be an impulsive break above that minor high, and you want to see it continue to go up. Okay. Yeah, so this I think will be very much similar to the pound dollar. Okay, so you want to take note, right? Basically they are pound related. So if you want to be trading both, just take note of your exposure. Yeah. So yeah, pound cat upside. Okay. The US 30 will be very much similar to NASDAQ and S&P. Okay, so we finally get that alignment on the three equities. Basically expecting downside. Okay. So yeah, any corrective pullback, look for the sell. Australia index, downside as well. Okay, so if I can update this very quickly, we're expecting that three-wave move. Okay. Okay, so this is a three-wave, right? WXY potentially completing that double bottom. Okay, so most of the index seems to suggest downside, right? CAD yen on 4-hour time frame showing buy opportunity. Not really. Okay, I wouldn't be buying on CAD yen. I would say, I think, okay, maybe you put in a typo, right? I would say CAD yen, you rather focus on the sell because this is like major top. We're gonna get a crawl here, right? So you definitely want to be focusing more on the sell side of things, right? So a potential trade that you can consider is to take the break out to the downside, right? I think we don't need to bring in the RSI. We'll have that divergence for sure, okay? So expect, if you want to take a sell, right, you can actually be a bit more aggressive. Look for the break of this low. Then of course we're expecting an impulsive break to the downside. And where can you look for targets? You can take actually all the way from the previous low to the top, and we're not surprised if this is really going to be a bigger pullback back towards the 50 and 618. Of course, it's not just going to go overnight, right? It's probably going to develop something like this, and we may get a move back down. Right, so CAD yen, probably downside. Yeah. So yeah, so I would say yeah. I mean, I can guess it's probably a typo, right? So you're looking at the sell. Yeah, so that would be right. Okay, euro yen. Not the clearest, to be very honest with you. We may have completed this pattern. Okay, we may have completed this pattern here, which opens up the upside, but it's not the clearest setup to be buying. Yeah, so I'm not very convicted in euro yen. Okay, short term, you may consider, if you're into it, okay, a 1 hour kind of setup. Right, so get a little bit of a V, you get a bit of a corrective right now. Of course, on the hourly, you can look for trade. You can have TP1, TP2 there. Okay, but that's about it, right? So short term, yes, maybe, right? Okay, but the pattern is not the clearest, right? Again, if you have options to choose from, then you always want to go towards the more clearer ones, right? But if your trade plan is like very much just focused on euro yen, then you can look for that short term buy. Okay. Yeah, so great. Okay, so yeah. So with that, I want to very quickly bring your attention or share with you an upcoming webinar that we're gonna have. So the webinar is actually organized by Everything Trading. Okay, and this webinar is gonna happen on the 24th of September, which is this coming Sunday, at 3 p.m. Right, so it's in the afternoon, and the webinar will be on Zoom. Okay, so the webinar topic here we're going to be talking about is expert advisor, which is EA, or some of you may be more familiar with the term robot trading, trade automation. Right? We'll be talking a little bit about that, introducing to you what exactly is EA, the benefits of EA, how do you manage it, what are some of the things you need to take note of, and then we'll be also covering the PAM feature, right? The PAM system, which stands for Portfolio Allocation Management Module. And after this webinar, when you gain a better understanding about what EA is, what the PAM system is, and you would like to, do what we call similar to copy trade, or basically follow an EA that I have, you can then leverage on the PAM system to automate the entire process for you, right? So that's the objective that we have for this upcoming webinar, okay, to share with you what EA is, to share with you what PAM is, and after that, okay, you can make a better informed decision as to whether this fits you and you would like to leverage onto that, okay. Yeah, so if you're interested in this, I would drop the link right now, okay, so you can click and register. You definitely need to register because you need to get the Zoom link, right? So again, you just put in your name, email, and then click register. You'll be able to receive the link, okay? Now, just very quickly, just share with you the performance of the EA as well as the PAM. Okay, let me just bring it up for you. Okay, so this is the account that I link it to my FX book, right? So you can see the performance of the EA running. So this account on the PAM system started back in May this year. Okay, and you can see that of course there are some months that are really great. There are some months are generally slower, like June and August. This month here probably is another slow month. Okay, but we never know, right? We might have more trades going into end of the month here as well. So generally, on average, I would say the EA can make you about 2 to 3%. Okay, and you don't need to do much, right? You just let the EA run, and that's the whole idea about it. The benefit of it is, it's automated. Okay, let me just very quickly show you a longer history account, right, that we have. So this is running since 2021, all the way in on June 2021. This EA has been running all this while. We have passed that 3-year mark, right? 2021, 2022, 2023. The EA performance has been overall great. Of course, we do have one down month here in November last year, but average out, you can see this EA is essentially making about 2 to 3% quite consistently, right? This is the performance of this year here as well. Okay, so this is not something that you aim for, kind of like get rich quick, or you kind of make huge profit in a very short period of time. But this is designed to be consistent. Okay, it's designed to be sustainable, right? So you don't expect kind of like high returns, high risks. Okay, we prefer to go by consistency and sustainability. So if this is something that you're looking out for, that aligns with you, then of course the webinar is where we'll share a little bit more into it. Okay, and we'll strongly encourage you to join to find out if this fits you. Okay, good. So that's all from me for today, right? Again, I hope the opportunities that I share with you will be able to give you some insights for the week. Okay, do pay attention to all the events that we have within this week as well. As I mentioned, it's a very eventful week. Take note of volatility involved. Okay, and of course, all the best to your trading, and we'll see you guys in the respective event itself. Okay, see you guys. Good night. Bye.